Hello, this is Jonah Dempsey, your host of the Human Design Deconditioning Guide. Special nighttime edition. I'm on 42nd and Greenwood North here in Seattle, Washington. And I'm headed to 115th and Greenwood. So it's quite the walk. Today I'm going to be talking about deconditioning based on your definition. So, definition in human design has to do with your defined centers. The definitions I'll be talking about are no definition, the reflector, single definition, around, I don't know if it's 30 or 40, 42% of people, I don't quite know. Maybe it's in the 30s. Split definition, the most common kind. And I'll be talking about two different varieties of split definition. I guess even three different varieties. The simple split, the wide split, and the very wide split. I'll be talking about triple split definition and quadruple split definition. So, you can know what your definition is by looking at your defined centers. If you have no defined centers, you're a reflector. A reflector has all 9 centers undefined. If you have 1 through 9 defined centers and they're all connected by channels, you're a single definition. If you have, between 2 and 9 centers defined. Because the minimum number of defined centers besides 0 is 2. It's impossible to only have 1 center defined, which itself is an interesting observation, because the definition of centers occurs through channels, which are the life force energy. So if all of your centers, if you have 2 or 3 or 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 centers defined and they're all connected, then you are single definition. Now, if you have a minimum of 4 centers defined, if you have between 4 and 9 centers defined, and they're in 2 different groups, then you have split definition, right? It's impossible to be split definition with less than 4 centers defined. Everyone with split definition has at least 4 centers defined. So for instance, I have 3 centers defined. If you meet anyone with 3 centers defined, you know they're single definition. There's no other possibility. If you have 2 or 3 centers defined, you are always single definition. Now, it's possible for someone with more than 3 centers defined to be single definition, but it's impossible with someone with less than 4 centers defined to be split definition. So, split means you have 2 different areas of definition. For instance, someone might have the spleen and the root defined, separate from the sacral and the G center. Or they might have the spleen, the root, and the ego defined, separate from the solar plexus, the sacral, and the G center. You get the feeling, you get the idea. So, of split definitions, there are 3 different types of split definition we're going to look at. Simple split. Simple split only requires a single gate to bridge. For instance, the person has sacral and G center defined. That person also has spleen and root defined. Then they have gate 9 activated. Well, this makes them a simple split because all they need is gate 52, the harmonic of gate 9. Gate 9 is in the sacral, pointing down to the root. It's part of the 952 channel of concentration. So this person, this hypothetical person, has 9. They don't have 52. If they had 52, they would be single definition. But instead, they're split definition, but they're a simple split. Gate 52 is their bridging gate. Now, you can have more than one bridging gate. I don't know the exact maximum, but I'd imagine if you're talking about, if the throat is the bridge, for instance, then you might even be able to have up to 7 bridging gates. Or, yeah, I would say the bridging gates, it might even be possible to have more than that. There might be 2 different ways you could be bridged, right? Like, maybe the G center could be bridged, multiple ways. And the ego could be bridged, and the solar plexus could be bridged, right? Because the G center, the ego, and the solar plexus could all be defined, and then the sacral, the root, and the spleen could be defined, but those could not be connected to each other. But they could all have hanging gates pointing at each other. So then you end up with, 10 potential bridging gates. But it's usually less. But in any case, a simple split is a split definition. That is, someone whose chart has 2 different areas of definition, 2 different groups of defined centers, and a single gate would bridge them. Next, we have the wide split. And the wide split is somebody who requires more than one gate to bridge them. Just tying my shoe here. A single gate would not bridge this person, right? A wide split has a minimum of a whole channel to bridge them. So if you're a wide split, say you have head and ajna defined, and then you have throat and G center defined, but you have no gates between the ajna and the throat. You don't have any of those. You don't have 43 or 23 or any of the gates. That is a wide split because it requires at least a full channel to bridge the 2 areas. And then finally we have, for the split definition anyway, finally the very wide split. And the very wide split requires a minimum of 3 gates to activate. So say you have the head and the ajna defined, and you have the root and the sacral. Well, that's very wide because no matter how you slice it, you have to go through the throat. Now, I guess it is possible, depending on what gates are activated, that only 2 are needed in that situation. Oh, no, actually it's not, sorry, because the G center is between. Yeah, so in that situation, no matter what, you're going to need 3 or 4, 5, 6 gates to activate in order to bridge that split. Okay, so where are we so far? Let's do a quick recap. If you're a reflector, you have no centers defined. If you're single definition, you have between 2 and 9 centers defined. If you have 2 or 3, you're automatically single definition. If you have 4 through 9, you're single definition, the criteria are the same. The criteria, or the only criterion, I should say, is that all of the centers are connected. If you're split definition, it means you have two different sets of connected centers. The minimum number of centers is 4, and the maximum is 9. Within split, there are 3 different subtypes. The simple split, where a single gate bridges them. The wide split, where it requires 2 gates. And the very wide split, 2 gates being a channel. The very wide split, which requires 3 or more gates. Okay, now we go to the triple split. The triple split has 3 different areas of definition. There are 3 discrete connected centers. So they might have the root and the spleen, they might have the sacral and the solar plexus, and they might have the G center in the throat. For instance. And those are 3 different areas and they're not connected to each other. That's a triple split. So a triple split has their own dynamic, which I'm going to go into. And finally, we have the quadruple split. So triple split, by the way, minimum of 6 centers. All triple splits either have 6, 7, 8, or 9 centers defined. Now we get to the quad split. The quad split has 4 different definition centers, which means they can only have 8 or 9 centers defined. So again, to recap, reflector, no centers defined. Single definition, between 2 and 9 centers defined. Split definition, between 4 and 9 centers defined. Triple split, between 6 and 9 centers defined. And then a quad split has either 8 or 9 centers defined. And these are determined by how the center activations are connected or not. You can have all 9 centers defined and be single definition, provided they're all connected. It's exceedingly rare, right? Okay, so now we're going to go into what it means to decondition from each type of definition. And of course, there's deconditioning dependent on aura type, whether you're a generator, projector, and so on as well. But I'm not going to really go into that. With the exception of the reflector, which we're starting with. The reflector is a little difficult because we can't really isolate what the deconditioning for the reflector is from the deconditioning of the definition. If we want to talk about single definition, well, there's single definition generators, there's single definition projectors, there's single definition manifestors. So we can talk about what they all have in common, and we can talk about what it means to decondition single definition as its own entity, as its own topic, regardless of whether you're a generator or a projector or a manifestor or a manifesting generator. We can't really do that with the projector. It's conflated because the only types that have no definition are reflectors. That's what I meant to say. Okay, so you're a reflector, you have 0 centers defined. Well, to decondition, to talk about it from a definitional aspect, I would say that part of having no centers defined is that you reflect the health of your community. And part of the mind's fantasy is that your quality of life depends on you, independent of your community. And so if you're a reflector, you have to realize your quality of life is always being limited, even dictated, by the health of the community to which you belong. The people in your life, and moreover, the environment, the undefined G-center rule always applies to reflectors. And that rule is the right people take you to the right places. And in the right places, you meet the right people. And so what happens is, if you're a reflector, you can get into this fantasy that you determine your quality of life, and that you're not dependent on your environment or your community. Now, to some degree, because the reflector has a Teflon aura, they are relatively more immune to the conditioning influence of people in their life. However, that immunity to people in their life is to individual people, to which they can sample their aura and get something from it, get a perspective from it, and then say, you know, my mom is a reflector, and she would always say, choose your experience. You know, so she would sample someone's aura, and they're in a really bad mood. She's not going to let that rub off on her. I'm a generator. I absorb that. I don't have a Teflon aura. I have a spongy, absorptive aura. So anyway, the fantasy for the reflector and the deconditioning for the reflector is typically around the impact of their environment and their community, despite the fact that no single individual from that community is influencing them on account of the reflector's Teflon aura. They are nevertheless impacted holistically by the community, and their quality of life is dependent on the health of the community. The reflector is a health check for the community. Okay, single definition. Well, this is a really simple one. The single definition has the fantasy of independence. Their deconditioning involves coming to learn of interdependence. This can be true for the reflector as well, but for the single definition, it's really this fantasy of, I don't need them. You know, why would I compromise with them? Why would I put up with that when I don't have to put up with that with someone else? So the fantasy for the single definition, so basically the way single definitions work is they process all the information on their own. They don't need to be in somebody else's aura to realize stuff. The single definition doesn't need to be around someone else. Sounds great, right? Sounds great. Well, it has its drawbacks. The single definition doesn't know how to be in a relationship. But everyone needs to be in a relationship. So the thing is, the single definition might believe, oh, all those split definitions, they're designed for relationships. I'm single def. I'm designed to be alone. Not true. Every human being, regardless of definition, including reflectors, including single definitions, needs other people, needs to be in a relationship. We start to go crazy even after a few days of being isolated with no other people around. Humans are social creatures. Human design does not disagree with this. You might read about Ra Uru Hu, the messenger of human design, and say, wow, he spent months and months alone, you know, as a single definition, integration, ego manifester. Why don't I do that? Well, even if you also are a single definition, integration, ego manifester like Ra, it's still not necessarily correct for you. It might be correct at a certain point in time in order to go through an intense deconditioning phase where you shed, you know, many societal mores and values, basically a shamanic journey or shamanic quest, but it's not necessarily sustainable. Ra was married for 25 years. Ra had kids, you know. If somebody as wild and hardcore individual integration ego manifester can do that, then that should tell you something. You don't have to have tribal channels to need to be social people. You don't have to have collective channels and so on. So what I'm saying is, regardless of your definition, you need people. And the deconditioning for the single definition is, they go, I don't need anyone. I don't need anyone. I'm fine just the way I am. I'm fine on my own. Well, that person, I don't need them. So their deconditioning, I won't say that it's coming to realize how much they need people. It's just coming to realize how interdependent we all are. And it's coming to realize that they don't know how to be in relationship. The same for the reflectors, and for the triple splits for that matter. And that we need the split definition to teach us. So if you're single definition, your deconditioning involves overcoming the fantasy of independence. Deconditioning from the fantasy that you don't need anyone else. Your wisdom, the potential for wisdom, becomes the wisdom of the open centers. You have the potential to become very wise about your undefined centers. Here I use the term open interchangeably with undefined. Some human design practitioners use the term open to refer to an undefined center with no gate activations. In that case, I call those completely open centers, centers with no activations. But when I refer to an open center, I simply mean an undefined center. And if you're single definition, you're here to experience your undefined centers. And that's where you get your wisdom. That's where you go to school. But you can't do that when you're making decisions with them. You can't do that until you've radically given yourself over to the experiment of making decisions with strategy and authority, at which point you're able to observe through the windows that are the open centers. Now, split definition. Deconditioning for the split definition. Let's start with the simple split. For all splits, there's a commonality. It's the deconditioning from believing that they need to be something other than what they are. It's the deconditioning from believing they're missing something. Right? The single definition doesn't feel like they're missing anything. The single definition, I mean, sure, you'll find a single def who says to their lover, "You complete me." But if you actually believe that as a single definition, you're crazy. Because part of you knows, even if it's under layers of conditioning, part of you knows that you're independent, that you don't really feel like part of you is missing. The deconditioning to get past that for the single definition is to realize how interdependent we all are, and to learn to compromise, and to learn from our split definition brethren and sistren and other brethren that, we all need people. But if your split definition, your fantasy is that there's something wrong with you, and if only you could fix, oh, hey, sorry, man. Sorry about that. Someone was sleeping there. Didn't see that guy. So, if your split definition, your fantasy is that you don't, that you don't have what you need. You need to fix yourself. You need to change yourself. You need to become other than what you are. And that is the fantasy that needs to be traversed. So the deconditioning for the split definition is to accept yourself as you are, to accept yourself as split, to not get hooked on whatever that thing is that would bridge you, whether it's a gate or a channel or a circuit. Okay, so now let's look at the difference of them. If you're a simple split, you have a single gate that bridges your areas of definition. As a simple split, the deconditioning involves no longer being hooked on that gate. So let's take the example from earlier, one I've used many times. It's the example of a simple split who has the single bridging gate 52 that would bridge their areas of definition. They have the spleen and the root, then they have the ego and the G center. There's no connection between those, or between G center there is. The sacral and the G center. Doesn't matter if they have ego or not in there. And the bridging gate is 52. This means that they have gate 9 activated. Well, what this person, as somebody I actually know, is going to be focused on is stillness. Because stillness is gate 52, and if they had gate 52, they would be single definition, right? So this person is going to have this fantasy as a generator. I can avoid frustration if only I can find stillness. So I better meditate all the time. I better surround myself with people who are very still. I better sit still. Something's wrong with me. I think I have ADHD, right? Somebody who identifies with this flaw that they have. And what they're going to do is they're going to get hooked on people who have gate 52. Now, the potential for the split definition is the tremendous wisdom of relationship. The wisdom to know all the different things that go into making a relationship healthy and productive and increasing the quality of life for those in the relationship. And so, as long as this individual is not following strategy and authority, they're chasing stillness. They're chasing it everywhere they go with their fantasy, I'm lacking, I'm missing something, something's wrong with me, I need something. And what they think they need is stillness. If only I had stillness, then I wouldn't be frustrated, right? And you can replace stillness with any of the gates that are bridging gates. If you yourself or someone you know is split definition, and you know they're bridging gates, look at that. If they are bridging gate 51, for instance, it's all about courage and jumping into the unknown. If only I had the courage to jump into the void, then I could avoid frustration. Or if they're a projector, then I could avoid bitterness or a manifestor. Then I could avoid anger, and so on. So you can do this yourself. You can look at what the bridging gate is, and you can look at what the fantasy is. So going back to our example of 52, this is a generator whose fantasy is that they could avoid frustration if only they had stillness. Well, the deconditioning for them is to realize they're fine just the way they are. They don't need the stillness. To realize they're not going to avoid frustration if they get the stillness. They're still going to have the frustration because the frustration comes from not following strategy and authority, from not trusting their sacral, or if their solar plexus is also defined from not trusting the outcome of the emotional clarity process, the emotional wave coming around to clarity. So what they need to realize through their deconditioning is, wow, I don't actually need that thing I thought I needed. There's nothing actually wrong with me. I'm designed just the way I am. To come to terms with that split. Now, they might still want to be private and public, go out and sit in a cafe where you're in other strangers' auras and you can get your split bridged. And when it's bridged, you'll have all sorts of epiphanies and realizations because the different areas of your definition are able to communicate with each other. So I'm not saying that people with splits don't periodically need others to bridge them. You just no longer get hooked on one person. And furthermore, you no longer get hooked on a theme that you're chasing and trying to embody. And what's wrong with me? I can't find stillness. If only I were able to find stillness, then I'd be okay. Now, what happens when you decondition is you become very wise about particular ingredients of what makes relationships healthy and productive. And one of those relationship constituents, really it's all the gates, except for the gates that are non-bridging gates, like 61, 63, and 64. But besides that, the other gates, the other 61 gates, can all be important, necessary constituents of a healthy relationship. And so what the split definition gets to learn is about what those relationship constituents are all about. So going back to our hypothetical person who gate 52 bridges, that person could learn about how important stillness is for a relationship, how important not jumping the gun, how important, experiencing that stillness together, and so on. Or if it was gate 58, that was the bridging gate, they would learn how important, joy is, and the joy in correcting things and improving things. Or if it was gate 29, they learned about how important commitment is, and really being all in, and how important the sacral yes is for a relationship, and so on. So each of the gates has a wisdom of the value of a particular theme for a relationship. Now let's look at the wide split. The deconditioning for the wide split is to realize it's not other people's problem. See, the wide split has a minimum of one channel to connect their areas of definition. So they don't feel like it's their problem. They don't feel like something is missing in their life. It's not like the person where the 52 is missing, right? The 52 is missing and they have the 9, they go, what's wrong with me? Why don't I have the 52? I should have the 52. I'm going to try so hard to have the 52. I'm going to try so hard to find stillness or be around people who have stillness because there's something wrong with me. I'm defective, right? So if you're a simple split, your deconditioning is realizing you're not defective. You're fine just the way you are. Now, if you're wide split, you don't go through that process. You're not going, what's wrong with me? Why am I missing this? You're going, what's wrong with them? Why aren't they there to help me? Nobody else is out there has stillness, and I need the stillness to help me focus, the 9. And likewise, nobody out there has the 9. Nobody knows how to focus, and if I don't focus, how am I going to be still? I'm not going to be able to concentrate since nobody else can help me. There's no one out there helping me. So the fantasy for the wide split is they have the problem, you have the problem. These are the most blaming people ever. If you have a wide split or somebody knows a wide split, this is someone who blames perpetually. It's not their fault, it's everyone else's fault because the other people don't know how to do it. Their split is the 48-16, the depth and skills that make the channel of talent. They go, well, everyone else is so shallow, they wouldn't know how to help me. They don't have solutions to my problems because 48 is also the gate of solutions, right? Or with the 16, they'll say, well, nobody else really has the skills for it. They're not skilled enough, so I have to do it myself. So the whole fantasy of the wide split is to blame other people, the feeling that you have to do it yourself because nobody else can do it, and it's all their fault. And so the deconditioning here is to realize it's not their fault. It's to realize there's nothing to do with them. It's all about you. It's all about your design. It's a perspectival illusion. So again, to recap, single def, your fantasy is you're independent. You need to realize how interdependent you are. The simple split, your fantasy is you're flawed. You need to realize that you're designed just the way you're supposed to be designed. You don't need something else to fix you. The wide split, your fantasy is others are supposed to do it, and they're not. They're incapable of doing it. Well, realize that everything is designed just the way it's supposed to be, that you're the one blaming other people. It's about you, not them. And then we get to the very wide split, where it requires 3 gates or more to bridge. And these are people who believe the entire world has a problem. Oh, it's hopeless because the world, they're not blaming individuals, and they're not going through the whole, what's wrong with me? Why can't I do it? And they're definitely not doing the single definition trip of, I'm so independent, I'm all I need. Instead, they're going, well, yeah, I'm a generator. I'd find satisfaction if the world weren't broken. I'm a projector. I would be successful, except the world is so messed up. These are people who see the world as the problem. I mean, there may even be levels to this. It might be with 3 gates, you see your city as the problem. With 4, you see your country. With 5, you see the world, and so on. I mean, I don't want to make it as strict as that, but I've definitely seen wide splits say, like a wide split projector who's so bitter and says, I'd be successful, but nobody in this city has good taste. You know, they don't recognize me. They don't notice how good I am, and so on. So that's part of it is when you have the wide split, you're going to be thinking it's either the city or it's the larger social group. It's not just another person that's to blame. It's the world that's to blame. So this brings us to the triple split. The triple split definition, their whole thing is that they need to constantly be moving. And this is a good thing for them. This is what they actually need. I'm not saying that they think they need this and they really don't. No, they actually need to be moving. So what's their fantasy? Their fantasy is that they don't. Their fantasy is that they're fine staying in the same place. Their fantasy is that they're okay being around the same person. Oh, how great it would be if me and my husband, or me and my wife, or me and my lover or partner, or a marriage partner, whoever, how great if we had a cabin and we could just spend time with each other for days on end. No, if you're triple split, you don't need that, you know. Or the triple split person who goes, you know, the triple split projector with solar plexus defined. I'm feeling so bitter. I'm so sad about everything and really low on my wave. I recognize that. You know, they've still made, say in this case, they understand the emotional wave, but they go, but how do I find clarity? I guess I better just sit here and think about it. Right? So they've already come far enough to realize they don't have clarity yet. They're not going to do anything rash. They're not going to make any decisions in the spur of the moment. But they have not yet understood the part the triple split plays. They're going to go, God, how do I find my clarity? And you're going to say to them, well, let's go. I got to run some errands. Come with me to a few different places. No, I need to sit here and work this out. No, you don't. If you're a triple split, what you need to decondition from is the feeling that you can work it out on your own, very similar to the single definition, right? The feeling that you can do it independently without going to different places. You're a triple split. You're made to be moving. You're made to be moving specifically through multiple different auras. So the example I gave is from a good friend of mine, one of my closest friends. It was about a month ago or 3 weeks ago when, you know, he's been doing human design long enough that he knows, as an emotional projector, he knows that, you know, he's not feeling great. And he goes, wow, I'm really down. I'm not going to make any decisions right now because I'm not feeling good. But, you know, but he still didn't know how to really come to that clarity. And he said, well, I'm just going to sit here and figure out the clarity. And, you know, I did say, well, you're welcome to come with me to some different places, and he did, and that was great. And then after he came with me to a number of places, 6 or 7 or 8 places, he goes, wow, I feel so clear about all of this now. Because all he needed to do was walk through all those different auras. He was designed to be moving, right? So the deconditioning for the triple split is the deconditioning that you don't have to move, the realization that you do have to move, that you have to be moving all the time, the realization that you can't work it out on your own sitting in a room. You can't make progress around 1 or 2 or 3 of the same people. You need 10 or 20 or 30 different people. I mean, theoretically, the triple split could do it with 3. 3 is like the minimum number of people they could come to clarity with, right? Because they have 3 different sides of themselves, and each person could bring out a different side of them. But a lot of times, different people will bring out the same side of you. So then what? You know, you need somebody else. In any case, the triple split is made to be moving. They're made to be going through different auras, connecting with different people, coming to realizations through that intermittent activation through different auras. Now, the quad split's a total mystery to me. And if there's any quad splits out there, I've met quad splits. I met at least one quad split. And I don't fully get it. I've read it's similar to the split definition. And unlike the triple split, the quad split can be bridged completely. See, the triple split, it's not really good for them to have all their areas bridged and to get stuck on one person who bridges everything. The triple split feels claustrophobic from that. The triple split feels, all trapped. The quad split theoretically does not. Other than that, I don't necessarily know. Oh, this is great. I walked by strength and conditioning. Great for the deconditioning guide here. So to recap, if you're a reflector, basically there's no advice I can give at a pure definition level because your definition is also connected to your type. So any advice that I give is going to have to do with being a type reflector. But generally I could say things like your health is going to be linked to that of the community. So there might be a fantasy that your quality of life and so on are independent of the community. And you might need to realize, no, actually, I'm very much dependent on the community. If you're single definition, your fantasy is that you're independent. You need to realize how interdependent you are. If you're a simple split, your fantasy is there's something wrong with you and that you need something else in your life to be complete. The deconditioning is to realize there's nothing wrong with you and you're designed that way. If you have a wide split, the conditioning, the not self, is to believe other people have the problem. It's their problem. It's not your problem. The deconditioning is to realize, no, it's nothing to do with them. If you're a very wide split, the conditioning is to believe your city is the problem, or your country is the problem, or the world is the problem. And the deconditioning is to realize, no, nothing to do with that. If you're a triple split, the conditioning, the not self, is to believe you don't need to move through the world. You can do it on your own. And the deconditioning is to realize, no, you need to be moving through all the different areas. And the quad split's kind of a mystery to me, but if I had to guess, I would guess that it's something similar to the split definition. Similar in the sense that maybe the quad split feels like they need someone to link them all up. That there's so many different parts of them that they aren't sure how they all connect. And it's, part of the deconditioning is to realize that's okay. You're meant to become wise about all those bridging gates, but you can't become wise about them if you don't have them in the first place, meaning if you don't have the inactive gate. So, we're each meant to become wise about something. Reflectors are meant to become wise about the health of their community. Single definitions are meant to become wise about the particular undefined centers they have. Split definitions. The simple splits are meant to become wise about particular gates. The wide splits are meant to become wise about particular channels. And the very wide splits are meant to become wise about circuitry. Their preferred circuitry. What is tribal about? What is collective, abstract? What is logic? What is individual or integration? And particular subcircuits. The memory circuit, the centering circuit, the defense circuit, and so on. So, I guess what I'm saying is, and then, triple splits are meant to have their own wisdom about the different ways they can be wired up, and variability. And the quad split are also probably meant to have their own wisdom, one that I'm not quite familiar with, but I imagine that it's a similar, each of us is meant to achieve that wisdom that's only possible when we make decisions according to strategy and authority, because then we're no longer doing double duty. Then we can actually notice, and we can become wise. And the single definitions need the split defs. I'm single definition. I don't know how to be in a healthy relationship. I need the split defs. Really, 61 different split defs, or some lesser number that have all 61 potential bridging gates. Because, that's how many split def bridging gates there are that are really the constituents that go into a healthy relationship. And I don't necessarily know how important commitment is for a relationship and really feeling that commitment at a cellular level. But someone who has the bridging gate 29 has the potential to learn that. And I might not really know how important resource management is, but someone with bridging gate 44 can learn that, and so on. So each of these bridging gates can be so valuable when it comes to relationship. Now, of course, if your bridging gate is one of the 10 love gates, it's especially important for loving relationships, for romantic relationships, and so on. Whereas, if it's one of the other gates, it might be more relevant for business partnerships or friendships or all the other kind of relationships there are out there. In any case, we're meant to become wise. We only become wise when we give ourselves over to strategy and authority, and when we are then essentially able to notice these things. So as a single def, you're able to notice the not-self themes of the undefined centers. As a split def, you're then able to notice the seductive pull of the bridging gates and how much you want those things, right? And when you're able to notice that, that's when you're able to really become wise and learn what it's all about. All right, this is your host, Jonah Dempsey of the Human Design Deconditioning Guide. Thank you for watching. Take care.